The wedding chamber was quiet, filled with the soft glow of alien lanterns that burned with a strange silver fire. The human sat on the edge of the bed, his mind still heavy with the weight of the marriage that had just taken place. He had not expected his life to turn like this, not in a galaxy where humans were often treated as weak outsiders. Yet here he was, a human soldier, now husband to a woman of one of the most powerful alien clans. She was beautiful, tall, with markings on her skin that shifted faintly under the light. Her presence carried both grace and authority, and even though she had chosen him, he could not help but wonder why. As he looked at her, waiting for her to speak, she finally broke the silence. Her voice was soft, yet her words were like a blade cutting through his chest. She told him she had a request, one that she could only ask of him. He nodded, curious, though a hint of worry formed in his stomach. Then she leaned closer, her strange eyes meeting his, and whispered the words that froze him where he sat. She wanted him to help her younger sister gain experience with males. The human blinked, not sure if he had understood. Perhaps it was a mistranslation. Perhaps the marriage bond ceremony had confused his mind. But no, she repeated herself calmly, as if she were asking something as simple as a favor. He stared at her, shocked, his heart beating louder than the silence around them. He wondered if this was some kind of trick, some test of loyalty he could never pass. Before he could even respond, the door at the far end of the chamber slid open. A figure stood there, smaller, fragile compared to his wife. The younger sister stepped inside, her movements hesitant, her body trembling as though each step cost her strength. She lowered her head, unable to look him directly in the eyes, yet he could feel her fear and her shame. She was young, her markings not as bright as her sister's, and there was an innocence in her face that made his chest tighten. He turned to his wife, expecting anger or mockery, but she looked at him with a calm expression, as though this moment was already decided. She explained slowly, her voice steady, that in their culture, a sister could not be married until she was proven to have endured her first night. If she failed, she would be judged unfit, sold, or cast away. Her words carried no emotion, as if this was nothing more than duty, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of sadness. The human tried to find words. He wanted to shout that this was madness, that no tradition could demand something so cruel, but his throat was dry. He turned to the younger sister, who finally raised her head. Her eyes met his, and for the first time he saw the desperation hidden in them. Her voice was barely a whisper when she spoke. She said that if she failed tonight, she would be given to a stranger tomorrow. Her hands trembled as she clutched the folds of her robe. The human's mind raced. Was this truly about culture? Or was it a test meant to break him? Was his new wife testing his loyalty? Testing if he could adapt to their ways? He could feel sweat forming on his palms as he looked between the two sisters. The wife stood tall, watching him with a strange mixture of expectation and sorrow. The younger sister stood frozen, as though her entire future depended on his decision. His heart pounded as he remembered the stories he had heard from other humans, tales of alien traditions, strange rituals that no human mind could ever understand. He had laughed at them once, thinking they were exaggerations, but now he was living one. A choice lay before him, one that could either save the young sister or destroy his own place in this alien world. The air grew heavier. He felt as if the silver lanterns themselves were watching him, waiting for his answer. The younger sister took a small step forward, her hands trembling, and whispered that she did not want to be hurt. She only wanted safety. The words hit him harder than any weapon ever had. It was not desire in her voice. It was fear. It was survival. He looked back at his wife, searching her eyes for mercy, for some sign that this was not what it seemed. But she only said, "You are the only male I trust. You will not hurt her." Her tone was firm, almost commanding, yet her voice cracked slightly, betraying the emotions she tried to hide. His chest felt tight. He could feel the weight of 2 lives pressing against him. If he refused, the younger sister would be thrown into the hands of someone who would not care, someone who would break her spirit. If he agreed, he would be crossing a line no human ever thought he would face. The chamber felt smaller, the silence louder, the shadows pressing against his skin. He knew eyes were waiting outside, guards and elders listening, waiting to see what the human would do. If he walked away, it would not just be the girl's life destroyed, it would be his wife's honor as well. His throat was dry, his mind torn apart, yet he could not ignore the truth shining in the younger sister's eyes. She was not asking for love. She was not even asking for him. She was asking for survival. And for the first time, the human understood the weight of being married into this alien house. It was not just about love. It was about power, tradition, and lives hanging by a thread. The younger sister's voice trembled as she whispered again, "Please, don't let them take me tomorrow." The words burned into his soul. He clenched his fists, his jaw tight, knowing that whatever choice he made tonight, it would echo far beyond this chamber. The silver fire flickered, and the night stretched into silence, waiting for the human's answer. The human did not sleep that night. The words of his wife kept echoing inside his head, mixing with the fearful eyes of her younger sister. He had faced battlefields, weapons, and death, but nothing had ever shaken him like this strange request. As the alien dawn came, painting the skies with glowing colors, he found himself sitting by the window, staring at the rising twin suns, and wondering what kind of world he had just stepped into. His wife entered the room quietly. She was calm, as if nothing unusual had been said the night before. She sat beside him, her long robe flowing like water, and placed her hand on his. He wanted to pull away, but he could not. Her touch carried warmth, but also the weight of expectation. Without looking at him, she began to speak. Her voice was steady, almost cold, as she explained the truth of her request. In their culture, every daughter had to be tested before marriage. A girl who had no proof of her first night was considered useless, a burden, a failure. Families that could not prove their daughters were prepared faced shame and punishment. The younger sister, she said, was too gentle, too soft. If no one guided her, the clan would hand her over to someone cruel. And once that happened, her life would be ruined. The human clenched his fists. He wanted to shout, to tell her how barbaric this tradition was, but his wife's eyes stopped him. There was no cruelty in them, only a kind of sadness, as though she hated it too, but had no choice. She told him softly, "I do not want her to suffer. You are my husband. You are the only one I trust with her." His heart twisted at her words. How could she trust him with something so dangerous, so heavy? He turned his eyes toward the door, where the younger sister had stood trembling the night before. He remembered her whisper, her fear of being handed to a stranger. He could almost hear her voice again, begging him not to let that happen. The human's mind raced. On Earth, love and marriage meant loyalty to one person. It meant trust, respect, and choice. But here, loyalty was tied to survival, and survival was chained to laws that made no sense to him. Was he expected to give up his human values just to fit into this alien house? Or was there a way to bend their tradition without destroying the girl's future? He turned back to his wife and asked her directly, "Why me? Why not another male of your people?" Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in something like fear. She told him that alien males of their world were raised to dominate, to take without mercy. To them, the ritual was not a duty, but a chance to break a girl, to prove her weakness. "If she is given to one of them," his wife whispered, "she will never recover." The human's chest tightened. Now, he understood why his wife had chosen him. She had not chosen out of cruelty, but out of desperate protection. She knew that only a human could show the younger sister the kindness her own people would never give. But that truth did not make the choice easier. It made it worse. As the hours passed, he found himself walking through the alien halls, lost in thought. The palace was vast, filled with statues of old warriors and symbols of strength. Servants passed him, lowering their eyes, whispering in voices he could not hear. He realized then that everyone already knew. They were waiting for the outcome, waiting to see if the human would obey the alien law or stand against it. Later that day, he found himself in the garden. The younger sister was there, sitting quietly among strange flowers that glowed faintly in the air. She did not notice him at first. Her hands rested on her lap, folded tightly, and her face looked pale. When she finally saw him, she rose quickly, bowing her head. He could see her fear, not of him, but of everything around her. He spoke gently, asking if she wanted this, or if she was only obeying her sister. Her lips trembled as she answered. She said she never wanted such a thing, but she had no choice. If she refused, she would be given away like cattle. Her voice cracked when she admitted something she had hidden. She had secretly wished it would be him, not because she wanted a human, but because she knew he was different. She had seen him in the battles, the way he protected the weak, the way he treated others with respect. "If it must be anyone," she whispered, "I would rather it be you than a stranger who would hurt me." The words cut deep into him. He felt her desperation like a blade pressed to his throat. She was not asking for love, not even asking for closeness. She was asking to survive. When he returned to his wife, his mind was torn apart. She waited for his answer, her face unreadable. He told her what her sister had said, but she only nodded, as if she had already known. "She chose you," the wife said, "and now you must choose too." The human could feel the walls of the palace closing in around him. He was caught between two worlds, his human heart, which screamed that this was wrong, and the alien law, which demanded obedience. If he refused, the girl would be taken. If he accepted, he would cross a line he never thought he would face. That night, as the silver lanterns were lit again and shadows stretched across the walls, the tension in the air became heavier. The younger sister was brought once more to the chamber, her steps slow, her face pale. She looked at him, her eyes filled with silent pleading. His wife stood behind her, strong but sorrowful, waiting for him to make the decision that would decide not only the girl's fate, but his place in this alien world. And as he stood there, the whispers of the clan echoed through the palace corridors. Everyone waited for the answer of the human. Would he obey their tradition, or would he defy it? The night seemed endless, the silence sharper than any blade, as the human realized his choice would change everything. The human walked through the long corridors of the alien palace, his boots echoing against the cold stone. Everywhere he turned, he felt eyes on him. Servants lowered their heads but whispered when he passed. Guards stared with unreadable expressions, as if silently judging him. He knew the reason. Word had spread. The human had been asked to take part in one of the oldest alien traditions, and now everyone was waiting to see if he would obey or resist. He tried to shake off the pressure, but his mind was heavy. He needed to understand this custom, not just from his wife's lips, but from the truth whispered in the shadows. He began asking questions. At first, people avoided him, pretending not to hear. But eventually, one of the older servants, her back bent with age, dared to answer. She told him that the ritual was cruel, more cruel than outsiders could ever imagine. Many young girls did not survive their first night. If they showed weakness, the clan declared them unworthy. Some were sold as slaves, others sent to labor camps in the mines, never to be seen again. The human felt his stomach twist. He had seen war, he had seen death, but this was something else. This was not survival. This was tradition wrapped in chains. He clenched his fists as the old servant went on, her voice shaking. She said males of their kind saw the ritual as a chance to dominate, to break a girl's spirit and show control. They believed pain was strength. If the girl cried or resisted, she was considered weak. The human's jaw tightened as he listened, anger burning in his chest. When the servant left, he stood alone in the corridor, his breath sharp. Now he understood why his wife had chosen him. She had trusted him not to break her sister. She had trusted him to be different from the males of her people. But understanding did not calm him. It only made the decision heavier. Later, he returned to the chamber where his wife waited. She sat with her hands folded, her face unreadable. He told her what he had learned. She nodded slowly, confirming every word. "This is our law," she said softly. "It has been so for generations. No one questions it." He stared at her, his voice low and tense. "And you accept it?" Her eyes shifted, showing the first flicker of pain. "I hate it," she admitted. "But hating does not change it. My sister will face it whether I like it or not. That is why I chose you, because you are not like them." The human felt torn. His heart ached at her honesty, but his mind screamed against the logic of it. If he agreed, he would be part of something he despised. If he refused, the girl would be thrown to someone far worse. Either way, his hands would not stay clean. That night, he found himself unable to rest again. His thoughts circled like predators. He imagined the younger sister's fearful eyes, her trembling voice begging him not to let them take her tomorrow. He imagined her being dragged away, screaming, while the clan called it justice. He gritted his teeth, unable to shake the image. In the days that followed, whispers began to grow louder. Elders of the clan were speaking of him. Some said the human was too soft and would shame his wife's house. Others said perhaps his difference would prove useful. But none of them cared about the younger sister's fate. To them, she was nothing more than a piece of tradition, a symbol of law. The human could feel the pressure closing in. Every step he took in the palace, every glance from the aliens, reminded him that this was not just about one girl. It was about power. If he refused, he would be seen as weak, an insult to his wife's family. If he obeyed, he would prove himself in their eyes, but at the cost of his own soul. He met the younger sister again in the garden. She was sitting under the silver trees, her face pale, her hands gripping the fabric of her robe. When she saw him, she stood but did not speak. He approached her slowly, his voice soft. He asked her if she understood what would happen if he refused. Her lips trembled as she nodded. She said she would be given to a stranger, someone who would not be gentle. She confessed she had seen other girls return broken, their eyes empty, their voices gone forever. Tears glistened in her alien eyes as she whispered, "I do not want to be one of them." The human swallowed hard, his throat dry. He wanted to promise her safety, to tell her he would never let that happen. But he could not speak the words. Not yet. He was still trapped by the weight of his choice. When he returned to the palace halls, he heard the whispers again. This time, he caught the words. Elders were speaking openly, testing his reputation. They wanted to know if the human was strong enough to follow the law. If he failed, they would call for punishment. Some even spoke of exile or death. The human stopped in the shadows, listening, his fists clenched. So it was not only the girl's future at stake, it was his own life, his wife's honor, and the fragile balance between humans and this alien clan. He realized then that the request was not just about helping a sister. It was about control, about whether a human could be bent to their laws. As he returned to his chamber, the silver lanterns flickered, throwing long shadows across the walls. His wife stood waiting for him, her face calm but her eyes sharp. She asked him quietly if he had decided. He looked at her, his chest tight, and said nothing. The silence between them was louder than any words. That night, as he lay awake, he heard movement outside the chamber door. Soldiers, waiting. Elders, listening. They wanted to know what choice the human would make. Would he obey? Would he defy? His heart pounded, sweat beading on his forehead. He knew one truth with certainty now. Whatever path he chose, there would be no turning back. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and confusion, a spark of anger began to grow. A dangerous custom had been placed in his hands, and though he had not yet decided what to do, he knew one thing for sure. If he was forced to bend, he would bend in his own way. And if they tried to break him, they would learn that humans did not break so easily. The chamber was filled with silver light from the tall lanterns, but the human felt only darkness pressing on his chest. Tonight was the night. The decision he had been avoiding now stood before him like a wall he could not escape. The younger sister was brought into his chamber. She moved slowly, her steps weak, her face pale under the glow of the fire. She looked small, fragile, like someone already carrying the weight of punishment. He noticed the marks on her wrists first. Thin lines, scars from chains or whips, the kind that never fully faded. His heart tightened at the sight. She was not just afraid of what was about to happen. She was already a victim of her people's cruel laws. Every scar was proof of how broken this tradition was. She stood near the door, trembling, her eyes lowered. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence was sharp, filled with tension. Then she whispered, so soft he almost did not hear it. "I don't want a monster. I only want safety." Her words cut through him more deeply than any blade ever had. The human stepped closer, slowly, as if afraid his presence might frighten her more. He wanted to reach out, to calm her, but he held back. His mind was filled with conflict. He had been raised to believe in love, in choice, in freedom. But here he was, standing in a world where survival meant obeying a cruel law. Behind the closed door, his wife stood outside, silent. He knew she was there. He could feel her presence, could imagine her listening to every word, every movement. She had asked him to do this, not out of cruelty, but out of fear for her sister's future. Yet he also knew this was breaking her heart. He looked back at the younger sister. Her hands shook as she clutched her robe, her eyes filled with silent pleading. She was not asking for passion or desire. She was asking for protection. To her, this ritual was not about marriage or love. It was about survival. He took a deep breath, fighting the storm inside him. His voice came out low but steady. "I will not hurt you." The words made her shiver, as if she was hearing something impossible, something she never thought a male would say. She looked up then, just for a moment, her eyes shining with tears. In that gaze, he saw both her fear and her fragile hope. It broke him inside. He had faced alien armies, monstrous beasts, endless battles. But this trembling girl before him felt like the greatest test of his life. The night grew heavier. Outside, footsteps echoed in the hallways. He knew the guards were stationed there, waiting. He knew the elders would demand proof before sunrise. His choice was no longer private. It was a stage, a show for the entire clan. If he failed, if he refused, the girl would be dragged away and punished. If he agreed, he would be used as an example of how even humans could bend to their law. The younger sister stepped forward, her knees shaking. She whispered again, her voice breaking. "They will come. If I do not prove myself, they will take me away. Please." The sound of her desperation pierced his soul. He clenched his fists, fighting back the anger boiling in him. Anger at the elders, at the cruel tradition, at the way this fragile girl had been trapped by her own people. He wanted to storm out, to fight them all, but he knew that would only end in her destruction. He moved closer, his voice calm. "Listen to me. You are not weak. What they say does not decide who you are." She looked at him, confused, as if no one had ever told her such words before. He wanted her to remember that this night would not define her worth. He wanted her to walk away with hope, not shame. Behind the door, his wife leaned against the wall, her fists pressed to her chest. She could hear his voice, his gentleness, and tears filled her eyes. She had feared jealousy, had feared regret, but now she realized he was doing something greater. He was saving her sister in a way no one else ever could. But time was running out. The sound of boots echoed louder outside. A heavy knock thundered against the door. Soldiers demanded to know if the ritual had begun. The human froze, his eyes darting to the door. His heart pounded. The elders would not wait forever. They would break down the door if they thought he was defying them. He turned back to the younger sister. She flinched at the knock, her entire body trembling like a leaf in the wind. She looked at him with terror, as if begging him to protect her from both the men outside and the law itself. He took another step closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You are safe with me. No one will hurt you tonight." Her tears finally fell, sliding down her cheeks, but for the first time, her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. Another knock shook the door, louder this time. Voices shouted in the alien tongue, demanding proof. The human's jaw tightened. He knew what they wanted. They wanted to hear cries of pain, proof of domination. They wanted to hear her broken spirit. But he had already made his choice. He would not give them what they expected. He would not be part of their cruelty. Instead, he would protect her in his own way, even if it meant deceiving them, even if it meant risking everything. He looked into her eyes once more and spoke firmly. "Do you trust me?" Her breath shook, but she nodded. For the first time that night, her fear was replaced by something else: faith. Outside, the pounding grew violent, the guards shouting that sunrise was approaching. The elders wanted their answer now. The human knew the next few hours would decide everything: the girl's future, his honor, and perhaps even his life. The silver lanterns flickered, casting shadows across the walls. The air was thick, heavy with expectation. The younger sister stood before him, trembling but no longer entirely broken. His wife waited outside, silent tears falling. The guards hammered on the door, and the human stood in the center of it all, ready to defy an entire culture in order to protect one frightened girl. The pounding on the door grew louder, shaking the walls of the chamber. The human stood frozen for a moment, his fists clenched, his breath steady but heavy. The younger sister trembled near the bed, clutching her robe tightly, as if it were the only shield she had left. Outside, voices barked orders, demanding the ritual be completed, demanding proof that the alien tradition had been obeyed. The human knew what they wanted to hear, the cries of a girl broken by fear, but he would not give them that. Inside the room, silence stretched like a blade. The younger sister's wide eyes searched his face, terrified of what choice he might make. She had begged for safety, not pain, but she also knew the price if the elders believed she had failed. Her hands shook as she whispered, "If they think nothing happened, they will take me away." Her voice cracked, every word carrying both fear and shame. The human moved closer, kneeling down so his eyes met hers. His voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man who had seen too many battles but had not lost his heart. "You will not be taken," he said firmly. "Not while I stand here." The words made her lips tremble. No male of her own people had ever promised protection. No one had ever told her she was safe. He placed his hand gently over hers. "They will hear what they want to hear, but I will not break you." She looked at him in confusion, not understanding at first. But then she realized his plan. He would make them believe the ritual had taken place, but he would protect her dignity, her spirit, and her body. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear this time, but from relief. From outside came another furious knock and the sound of boots scraping against the floor. The elders were growing impatient. His wife's shadow passed across the crack of the door. He knew she was listening. Her heart caught between duty and love. He raised his voice just enough for those outside to hear, speaking words in the alien tongue he had learned during his time with them. He said the ritual was beginning, letting his tone carry weight and certainty. The younger sister stiffened at first, fear flashing in her eyes. But he gave her a small nod, a silent promise that she was safe. Then he told her quietly, "You only need to play the part. No harm will come to you tonight." She hesitated, but the trust she had seen in his eyes earlier returned. Slowly, she nodded, her breath unsteady but calmer than before. They made the sounds the guards expected, not of cruelty, not of pain, but enough to fool the ears pressed against the door. The human was careful, every movement chosen to shield her from fear while sending a false story to those outside. The younger sister followed his lead, her trembling body slowly learning that this was not a night of destruction, but of survival. Minutes stretched into hours, and the pounding outside finally grew quiet. The guards muttered among themselves, seemingly satisfied. The human's wife remained by the door, silent tears slipping down her face as she realized what he had done. He had obeyed the law in appearance, but not in spirit. He had protected her sister while deceiving the elders who demanded proof. When the last footsteps faded away, the chamber sank into silence again. The younger sister collapsed onto the bed, her hands covering her face. She was not crying from terror now, but from the storm of emotions crashing inside her. The human sat beside her, his shoulders heavy with the weight of what he had just done. He had not only defied tradition, he had lied to an entire clan. If they discovered the truth, death would be the least of his punishments. She lowered her hands and looked at him. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Why?" Her eyes were filled with questions. Why had he chosen to protect her when it would have been easier to follow the custom? Why had he risked his own life for someone who meant nothing to his people? His answer was simple, spoken with the steel of conviction. Because no one deserves to be broken. Not you, not anyone. His words hung in the air, heavier than any weapon. She stared at him, stunned, as if no one in her life had ever said such a thing. Just then, the door burst open. The elders stormed into the room, their robes swaying, their eyes sharp with suspicion. Guards followed behind, their weapons at the ready. The younger sister gasped and pulled her robe tighter, fear flooding back into her eyes. One of the elders stepped forward, his voice cold. "It is sunrise. We demand proof." His words sent a chill through the chamber. The human stood slowly, his eyes hard as steel. He placed himself between the girl and the elders, his broad shoulders forming a shield. "You have your proof," he said firmly. His voice did not tremble. His tone did not break. He dared them to challenge him. The elders narrowed their eyes. They searched his face, his posture, the trembling girl behind him. The silence stretched like a knife. For a moment, it seemed they would accuse him of lying. His hand twitched toward the blade on his belt, ready to fight if they tried to drag her away. Then one of the older elders smirked. "Perhaps the human is not so weak after all," he said. Murmurs spread among them. Some nodded, others frowned, but none pressed further. They turned, their robes swirling, and left with their guards. The human exhaled slowly, the tension finally releasing from his chest. The younger sister clung to him from behind, her body trembling with both fear and relief. She had been spared. For now. But as the door closed again, he knew this was only the beginning. He had defied their sacred custom, even if they did not realize it yet. He had lied to the council, protected the girl, and placed himself in direct conflict with their law. And somewhere deep inside, he also knew this truth. The clan would not forget. They would test him again, harder, crueler, until either he bent to their will or broke their chains completely. Tonight, he had saved her. But tomorrow, the real battle would begin. The morning light entered the palace through tall crystal windows, casting long shadows on the floor. The human stood in the center of the grand hall, his wife on one side, her younger sister on the other. The air was thick with tension. The council had gathered, their eyes cold, their robes heavy with symbols of power. Guards lined the walls, hands on their weapons, waiting for orders. Everyone was staring at him, the outsider, the human who had dared to bend their sacred tradition. The eldest counselor's voice cut through the silence like a blade. You mock our law. You speak of honor, yet you twist our customs to suit your own weakness. His tone was filled with venom, each word dripping with the desire to see the human punished. The younger sister clung to his arm, trembling, but he stood tall, his face hard with determination. He looked around the hall, at the eyes filled with hatred and suspicion, and then spoke clearly. I will not allow your cruelty to destroy her. If you call this law, then your law is broken. Gasps spread across the hall. No one had ever spoken against the council in such a way. The guards shifted, their hands tightening on their blades. His wife's eyes widened, but there was pride hidden in them, pride mixed with fear. She knew what was coming. The counselors leaned forward, their faces dark. You dare defy us? One hissed. A human standing against the blood of our ancestors? The human's voice did not tremble. I dare, because no law is worth more than a life. No tradition is worth more than her safety. His words echoed through the hall, louder than the beating of his heart. He knew he was risking everything, but he could not back down. The younger sister's tears slipped silently down her face as she pressed closer to him. Never before had anyone stood for her like this. All her life, she had been told she was weak, a burden, a failure. Now, for the first time, someone was shouting to the galaxy that she mattered. The tension snapped. The head of the council raised his hand, and the guards stepped forward. Swords gleamed in the light, and the air filled with the sound of armor shifting. The human placed himself in front of the sisters, his hand moving toward the weapon at his side. He knew he was only one man, but he had fought worse odds before. His wife suddenly stepped forward, her voice sharp and filled with fire. Enough, she cried, standing beside him. Her eyes blazed as she looked at the council. You call yourselves leaders, yet you hide behind old chains. This human has shown more honor in one night than you have shown in a lifetime. The guards hesitated. Whispers spread among the younger warriors standing near the edges of the hall. Some of them were nodding, their eyes filled with doubt for the council. The human noticed it. His wife had seen it too. The old laws were beginning to crack. The eldest counselor slammed his staff against the ground. Silence! If he refuses the law, then he must pay the price. His head will prove our strength. His blood will remind the galaxy that our ways are unbroken. The younger sister gasped, her small hands tightening around the human's arm. No, she cried, her voice breaking. If he dies, it will be my fault. Take me instead. Her plea filled the hall with a painful silence. Even the counselors faltered for a moment. But the human shook his head firmly. He stepped forward, pulling himself free from her grasp, his eyes locked onto the elders, unafraid. If you kill me for protecting her, then let everyone see your cruelty. Let them see how you fear one man who refuses to bow. His voice rose louder, each word striking like thunder. The counselors seethed with rage. The guards moved again, stepping closer, but the human did not flinch. His wife moved beside him, lifting her chin high. If you take his head, you will take mine too, she said. Her words shocked many. Murmurs spread quickly. To see a high-born alien woman stand against her own council for a human, it was unthinkable. The pressure in the hall grew unbearable. The guards looked at one another, uncertain. Some lowered their weapons slightly. The younger warriors whispered, their eyes shining with a dangerous new thought. Maybe the human was right. Maybe the old laws were not strength, but chains. Then, the massive doors of the hall swung open. Heavy footsteps echoed across the chamber as a new figure entered. The queen herself, taller than all, her presence sharp and commanding, stepped forward. Her golden crown caught the light, and her eyes blazed like fire. The entire hall dropped to silence. Even the counselors bowed their heads. She looked at the human, then at the trembling younger sister behind him, and finally at the wife standing strong at his side. Her voice was cold but curious. "What is this I hear? A human dares challenge the laws of my people?" The counselors immediately tried to explain, their words rushing, their anger disguised as loyalty. But the queen raised her hand, silencing them all. Her gaze returned to the human. "You risk death by standing here. Tell me, human, why do you fight so hard for one girl who is not even of your kind?" The hall waited, every breath frozen, every eye locked on him. The human lifted his head, his voice firm and steady. "Because strength is not in breaking the weak. True strength is in protecting them. If you cannot see that, then your throne is built on lies." The queen's eyes narrowed. For a long moment, she said nothing. The silence was suffocating. The counselors glared at him with hatred, but the younger warriors watched with awe. The younger sister's tears fell freely, and his wife's hand slipped into his, her grip tight with trust. Finally, the queen spoke, her voice sharp as a blade. "Very well. If you believe so strongly, then you will prove it, not with words, but with action." She turned to the council. "He will face our trial. If he survives, his words will become law. If he fails, his blood will feed the stones of this hall." The human's jaw tightened, but his eyes did not waver. He had expected nothing less. This was the only way forward. Behind him, the sisters held their breath, their lives bound now to his courage. The queen's voice echoed through the hall as she declared, "Prepare the trial." The trial was announced before the sun had fully risen, and the news spread through the palace like wildfire. The human would face judgment not in silence or shadows, but before the entire court, before warriors, servants, and nobles alike. The queen had decreed it, and her word was law. The great arena was prepared quickly. Stone walls rose high around the circle, torches lit with green fire casting flickering shadows on the ground. Hundreds gathered, their voices murmuring with excitement and hunger for blood. Some wanted to see the human fail, to prove that his defiance was nothing but arrogance. Others whispered with hope, their eyes glimmering at the thought that maybe, just maybe, change could come if he survived. The human stood in the center of the arena, his body calm, though his heart pounded like a drum in his chest. He wore no heavy armor, only simple battle clothes and a blade strapped to his side. Across from him, the gates opened with a loud groan, and out stepped a massive alien warrior. The creature was taller than any human, its skin covered in armored scales, its eyes glowing with fury. It carried a weapon as long as the human's body, sharp and dripping with venom. Gasps spread through the crowd. This was no ordinary test. This was death given form. The queen had chosen a monster of her people, a warrior who had broken dozens before him. The message was clear. If the human truly believed in his words, he would prove them with his blood. The human took a deep breath and tightened his grip on his blade. He could feel the weight of eyes upon him. His wife standing at the edge of the arena, her face pale but her gaze unbroken. Her younger sister clung to her side, her small hands shaking as she whispered prayers he could not hear. Both of them depended on him. If he fell, they would be destroyed. If he survived, they might be free. The trial began with the slam of a drum. The alien warrior charged, his steps shaking the ground. His weapon swung down like thunder, aimed to split the human in half. But the human rolled aside, the blade crashing into stone, sparks flying. He rose quickly, his eyes sharp, his breath steady. He knew he could not match the warrior's strength. He would have to use speed, wit, and the stubborn will that humans carried in their blood. The fight raged. Again and again, the warrior struck, each blow heavy enough to shatter stone. Again and again, the human dodged, his blade flashing only in quick strikes against weak points. Behind the knee, under the arm, across the joints where armor could not fully protect. Blood began to flow, and the crowd roared with shock. For the first time, the giant stumbled, its strength no longer untouchable. The counselors shouted from their seats, their voices sharp with fear and anger. They had expected the human to be crushed quickly, but now he was standing, fighting, proving their law was not unbreakable. The queen watched in silence, her golden eyes unreadable. The human's muscles burned, his breath ragged, but he refused to stop. Every memory of the younger sister's tears, every whisper of her fear, every glance of his wife's trust burned inside him like fire, giving him strength where his body should have failed. When the warrior swung again, he caught the strike with his blade, forcing it aside with every ounce of power in his arms. Then he lunged, driving his weapon into the beast's chest. The arena froze. The warrior staggered, roared in pain, and then collapsed onto the stone floor, his weapon clattering uselessly beside him. Silence followed, heavy and endless, as the crowd stared in disbelief. The human stood tall, blood dripping from his arm, his chest heaving, but his eyes burning with fire. Then the cheers began, not from the elders or the council, but from the younger warriors, from the servants, from those who had suffered under the cruel laws. Their voices rose like thunder, chanting the human's name, crying for change. The sound shook the arena walls, louder than the drums that had started the trial. The counselors tried to silence them, their voices sharp with rage, but the queen raised her hand. The noise stopped instantly. She rose from her throne, her gaze fixed on the human. For a long moment, no one breathed, waiting for her judgment. Finally, she spoke. Her voice carried across the arena, heavy with power. He has spoken with his blade, and he has spoken with his heart. From this day forward, no sister shall be forced. The law is broken and a new law begins. Gasps spread once more. The counselors cried out in protest, but their words were drowned by the roar of the people. The queen silenced them again with a single gesture. This human has shown us a truth we forgot. Strength is not in breaking the weak, it is in protecting them. The human stood silent, his chest rising and falling. He had not fought for glory or fame, but for two sisters who had trusted him. And now his fight had changed an entire people. His wife rushed forward, her face filled with tears. She threw her arms around him, whispering words only he could hear. You have done what no one else could. You saved her, and you saved us all. The younger sister followed, falling to her knees before him. Her hands shook as she clutched his arm, her voice breaking with emotion. You gave me back my life. I will never forget. The queen's voice rose one final time, declaring to all, let it be known across the stars, this human has broken the chains of tradition. Let his name be carried in honor. The arena thundered with voices. The sound of a people changed forever. And as the human stood there, bloodied but unbroken, he realized his marriage had never been about one woman alone. It had been about a future, about a people learning what true strength meant. Far above, the suns rose higher, casting golden light over the arena. The human lifted his head to the sky, knowing the battle was over. But the journey was only beginning. For now, though, he had won. He had protected the sisters. He had changed the law. And he had shown the galaxy that humans, no matter how small or weak they seemed, could never be broken.